Okay. Hey guys. Long time no see. I know. I did take a little bit of time off of work this week and next week just so I can make sure everyone is caught up. Everyone's IRB approval is actually starting to roll in pretty quickly, which is great. We're still at a good point in the semester, so you'll have a good solid 3 to 4 weeks to collect data. And I'm gonna put a couple of announcements out to the other class that I teach, just to let them know that studies are available, and we're gonna ask. I'm pretty sure that all of the undergrad professors are doing the same. So you'll have a good 3 4 weeks to get some solid data. So I'm pretty sure most of you are going to hit your participant mark. I know a lot of you had wanted to get at least 40, at max 60. I'm pretty sure that you'll be able to hit that. There are tons of freshman classes looking to earn those extra points, and now I want to say it's actually mandatory to do a certain amount of research study or research participation um, in those undergrad classes anyway. So for this video, I'm actually going to focus on the introduction and method section, and I'll go over a couple of things that I saw. I'm just going to go over the notes, go over the rubrics, and then just kind of explain like what it is I want to see in your revisions for the end of the semester. So we'll start with the introduction, even though I know that the method section was first. In the introduction, essentially you are introducing the background of the literature that is on that your topic is on. So in short, like your introduction should have a couple of pieces to it. It needs to have a couple or just one introductory paragraph kind of detailing what your topic is. In this, you'll have like your rationale, what are you studying? Why is it important to study it? And then you're going to have a literature review. So that lit review is when you actually are summarizing those articles, 9 to 10 articles. And then you're going to close out your introduction with just talking about some of the overall trends that you saw in your literature review. And then just some information about your research question and then your hypothesis. So that's how you're going to end it with that paragraph. So the literature review, and we'll talk about that beginning and end part of it too, because I think sometimes a lot of people just focus on the lit review as being like the only part of the introduction, and it's not. Like you do need to kind of introduce your topic and close out the introduction. So the lit review is actually used for a couple of different ways. First of all, the lit review honestly is used as it kind of gives your readers a conceptual background for what your topic is. So, whenever you're writing a research project or writing on a research topic, or actually conducting like an experiment or some kind of empirical research, you have to assume that your readers don't know anything about your topic. So, even if the audience is intended to be like colleagues or peers, or you're trying to publish to a journal that you know only other psychologists read, you still need to assume that your readers don't know anything about what you are actually researching or writing about. So that's what the lit review pretty much does. It will essentially let the readers know, like, hey, what's been found already? What's not been found? Where is what's the background on this research topic? And you can get a snapshot of the field or the topic independent of this new research. So for the purpose of your study, with the lit review, you really want to point out like what this study does or how it complements research on this topic. Does it close a gap in the research? For example, I know in my field, um, a lot of the times you'll see our techniques in APA used with individuals, mainly children with autism spectrum disorder. So there's actually a big gap in our literature looking at techniques that are used for adolescents or techniques that are used for neurotypical individuals or techniques that are used for adults. So, is your research closing a gap in the literature? Could you, maybe when you're doing your lit review, you were looking, are just starting to get ideas for your hypothesis, you were looking in the literature and you didn't see a lot of research on X, Y, and Z. So does your research address that? Does it test an aspect of a certain theory? Does it replicate an important study? Which, that's also a thing. Your study could be just a straight up replication study, or it could be a replication study with like slight modifications. So, even a replication study, even if you find the exact same thing that previous research studies found, that's still very, very, very important in science, because it just confirms that, okay, well, the theory and the hypotheses and really the explanations that we're giving is is valid, because we have all these studies showing that if you do it this exact same way, this will be the outcome. So really it strengthens the research on that topic. A replication study is always important. Does it retest a hypothesis or a new or improved methodology? So, of course, over time, new theories are developed, new technologies are developed that allow us to, test certain theories in different, sometimes better ways. Does your research project do that? Does it resolve conflict in the field? So sometimes, especially in psychology, you will see that there are two theories or two explanations that sometimes conflict with each other. Does your research project um, try to solve that conflict? Or does it create original research? This is very, very, very rare, which I think sometimes students, when they set out to do their research project, like that's what they're looking for. They're looking for the experience of finding new research or finding a new finding on a topic, but this is very, very, very rare. So, how do you compose the lit review? Um, Typically, you want a lit review to be very fleshed out. You want to find quite a few articles. This, I want to say, the standard research project finds anywhere from 20 to 40 sources. That's not citations. That's just like sources. It will have at least like 40 references. So for the sake of this course, only doing like 8 to 10 is actually like a very small taste of what you would be doing if you had to do an actual um, scientific like research project in the field. So lit review pretty much summarizes, it links, it analyzes literature on a topic. It's essentially an analytical snapshot of a field or a topic. It links the current study to the literature as a whole. Yes, we do look at the inductive and deductive methods that are used within the research. We look at how to link certain research projects and certain references together. But overall, you need to also show, how does this research, how does this lit review link into my study? That is the biggest mistake I see people make, usually in like 428, sometimes 427. But what students will do sometimes is just find any literature that like vaguely mentions their topic. Like, for example, let's say you're doing I don't know, let's just say you're looking at memory based on personality types. So people will like vaguely find research that just mentions memory as a topic and doesn't really look at the intersection of memory and personality, which is what they would like to do their research on. So you can't just find something that just mentions the topic that you're studying. It actually has to be relevant to your study. So you need to find literature that supports your study. It's even okay to find literature that does not support your study if you talk about how your study will address what that literature is demonstrating. So how do you start doing this? And hopefully, this is something you learn in 428. I typically will use two methods. So McNeese does have a library database. You can go to the McNeese library. I I try to model how to do this every year, and then I remember that I don't know my pin. But essentially, here let's see if we can do it now. Because you being a student at a university, which is typically like this, you actually have access to a lot of these journal databases that you would otherwise have to pay for. Um, I feel like it's gonna ask me for my password. Oh no, it doesn't. Well, not yet. So yeah, you can simply go to the McNeese Library, and then it will give you access through the search bar to type in your topic or what have you. And so in these fields, you can even go on to specify your results even further. So if you want to look up, let's just say I want to look up prompting methods. Only concerned with individuals with autism spectrum disorder who are 5 years or younger. So I can come up with keywords. I might put children and then ASD right here, and then it will shoot out all. It should shoot out all relevant articles based on those keywords or based on those that criteria. So again, if it's available, you should be able to pull the PDF or the HTML full text page. If not, if you see an article that you really want to use, but it's probably not available, I believe you can do what's called an interlibrary loan, where the library will find the article for you, but it might take them 2 weeks to get access to it. But when they do, they'll notify you, and you will be able to, like, I guess, loan or lease that article for a period of time. Yeah, no. So some of the options I think will have like ILL or something like that. But that is what that service is. So you can do that, or you could also go to good old Google Scholar, and then let's just say it's ABA. With Google Scholar, it also finds articles that have been published in a peer reviewed journal. If you have access to, and some of these are free, you'll know they're free if you have access to like the PDF. So those are a couple of ways, but I'm sure y'all knew that already. So typically, you do want to try to present research that is not older than 5 years. A 5 year span from like the present year is the most ideal, just because as time goes, like I mentioned earlier, as time goes on, new research develops, research is refined. So you really, really, really don't want to be pulling very old research, because what might happen is you actually don't know who's, and this is specific to this class, you don't know which professor has expertise in what. So if you use a lot of old research, they will actually call you on it. They will say that, hey, um, I see that you're talking about literature from 2009, but this theory has actually been disproven in 2015. So if you looked at research from 2015 and on, you'll see that it's actually, X, Y, and Z. So just know that you really should try to get research articles and empirical research that is as as new as possible. The only reason why I would suggest you get an old article, like an article from like the 80s or 90s or something like that, is if you're looking for a theoretical article. That's fine. I mean, even with that, you might want to get one that's a little bit newer. um, but if you're looking for a theoretical article to help you maybe define your variables or just talk about the topic or the concept that your research study focuses on, then that might be the only reason why you really want to get any kind of article that is that old. You really don't want to find an empirical article, which when I say empirical research or empirical article, that is a research article that has an actual like experiment carried out in it. You really don't want to get one of those that's 10 or 20 years old because new research has been, trust me, new research has been produced since then. Okay. So, when you're actually writing the lit review, you can do this one of two ways, and I've seen it done one of two ways. Typically, I would say the way that I've seen it done the most um, is people will take 8 to 10 articles and they will summarize each article in a paragraph. Within that paragraph, they will summarize the main points of the article, and then in that last sentence or two, tie it back to how it links to their research project. I've seen people do it topic by topic. So within their literature review, they just have three subtopics that they talk about. So like for example, in that in that example I gave earlier with like the memory based on personality traits. So they might have a section for research on memory, research on personality traits, and then the research on the intersection of memory and personality traits. Or they might have a subsection for the intersection of research and memory, and then um, research based on memory based on extroversion, and then memory based on introversion, because that's what their studies focused on. So it can be done either of those ways. I've also seen somebody do it where um, they just talk about the intersection between their two variables throughout the whole topic, and they just use citations and references from all of the studies they found throughout their like 4 pages of lit review. So it can be done any one of those ways. I would say that the most popular way to do it is by summarizing or having a paragraph for each of those articles that you find. But I've also seen people do it just with some subtopics. So, what do you write about in the summary? When you summarize those research articles, what do you write about? You definitely want to write about the different parts of the research that are most, I would say, most important to your study. So, talk about their research design, talk about their findings. If you're testing a specific population of people and you found that this research project did the same thing and that's why you picked it, then talk about that. But you definitely want to summarize the research article in about half a page. You want to talk about their design. You might want to mention the participants. You want to talk about their findings. And then you definitely want to talk about how does this link back to your study. And this could be done as simply saying, um, you know, this study demonstrates that memory and extroversion may have a strong correlation or a high positive correlation, which is the hypothesis in the current study or something like that. But you do need to try to link or just make it obvious to the reader why this study that you chose to summarize is relevant to your study. A few APA recommendations: try not to use contractions, do not use first person. Only use acronyms after you've defined their meanings, which is also the same in the method section. So like if there's a, let's just say you're doing like you're reporting on the functional assessment of, I don't know, or the questions, let's just say you're using a measure called questions about behavioral functions. You wouldn't put the QABF until you actually wrote out questions about behavioral functions. Spell out numbers 0 to 9, and for all other numerals above 9, use the actual, for all numbers above 9, use the actual like numeral representation, which is like the number. Definitely avoid slang, like this is a research paper, idioms, colloquialisms. So, this is a professional research paper, treat it as such. Make sure you double space all lines, and you have to double space throughout your whole paper. Make sure the margins are correct, 1 inch all the way around. Be consistent with verb tenses. So, and I know some of you were confused about this. Right now, no, you have not written your research paper. You have not, sorry, you've not run your research project. After you do, you need to change it to past tense. So right now, it's okay to write in future tense, but just know that when you submit this paper at the end of the semester, it will have to be in past tense since you actually did it. So now looking at the introduction rubric, let's kind of go through a couple of these things. So there's the title page, and we didn't talk much about this, but the title page is actually like the first page of your paper. And in the title page, you have a little bit of information. Now, since we are on, I want to say the 7th edition of APA format, it's changed a little bit. I'm actually gonna have to look it up and double check uh, that this is correct. If it's not, I'm probably not going to grade y'all on this. I'll just exempt it and then make sure everyone has the right format. Now for the introduction itself. So when you start the introduction, when we're looking at APA format, make sure that the running head is in all caps. Let me see if I could actually pull up an example. Okay, yes. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, well, nope, can't make it big. So okay, when I say that the running head needs to be in all caps, so the running head is this right here to the left in the header. It's an abbreviated version of your title. It needs to be in all caps, and anything past the first page, the title page, it does not have the word running head preceding it. Make sure, a lot of people forget this just because it automatically defaults to a different font, but make sure that your page number is in the same font as your running head, which is in the same font as your paper, which should probably be Times New Roman, 12 point. Have a title as the header with both upper and lowercase lettering. You should not have a header that says introduction. No. So you see right here how they actually don't have like a header that says introduction like they do for the method section, results, etc. The introduction is the only section that you're actually going to have your title as the header. Make sure that it's not in all caps. It does need to be that combination of upper and lowercase letters. Make sure you have the 1 inch margins, double space your paper. So moving on to the actual content of the introduction. You need to start with that introductory paragraph. So in this paragraph, just introduce your variables. Really introduce your variables of interest and the rationale to study them. So if you are looking at like memory and personality, something like that, then talk about, open it with a good, strong introduction of like, maybe this is a topic that is still puzzling to a lot of psychologists. How is this important? Is this important for incoming freshmen? So talk about like what your variables are. Don't define them. Don't define them. Just talk about like why they're important. Um, why are you studying this? Why are you running this study? Kind of like in your abstract, how you introduced it in the first like two or three sentences in your abstract. Think about just the fact that you're expanding that in this paragraph. And then you move to your article review. So in your article review, I I don't know if and I might be doing might I might have a few different requirements than you've seen before. Hopefully not. But I do think you should have a range of types of research articles that you actually include in your introduction. And no, not everyone's topic may necessarily have these, but we'll talk about them. If you could try to find them, that would be great. Hopefully everyone's research topic has these. No one's presenting on a research topic that's just like totally new or anything like that. Okay, so first of all, you use a theoretical article to help define your variables of interest. This is like a discussion based paper. This might be one of those like older papers, that's okay. But essentially, you're looking for um, a research article that is more so like discussion based and talks about the theoretical aspects of your topic. So you're not necessarily looking for a research article that, again, same example, a research article that shows an experiment that was done with memory and personality. You're looking for a research article that explains what is memory, what are the different types of memory, okay, what is personality, what does this field think personality is. So it's more so a discussion based paper on the theoretical aspects of your topic. And then moving on to the 6 to 7 empirical articles. So, again, empirical articles just mean that a research experiment was done, whether it's an ex post facto research design, a correlational design, an ANOVA, what have you. An actual like experimentation was carried out, a survey was carried out, like research was carried out. So, that's what an empirical article is. And I think that's what people are most familiar with. A meta analysis. So I always try to encourage everyone to find this a meta for a couple of different reasons. If you can find a meta analysis, which a meta analysis is an analysis of hundreds and hundreds of articles that have been done on this topic, if you can find a meta analysis, you will find a breadth of literature on the topic that you're looking for. Let's see if I can find one. Okay, so this is a meta-analysis of just ABA intervention for ASD in early childhood. So in this one research article, it actually analyzed hundreds of research articles from 1985 to 2009. So if I go to the I really would like to show y'all the reference section, but because it's looking up all these different studies, the reference section is like huge. So if you're having trouble finding some studies, you can actually use that reference section to look for different studies. That's actually a method that I would use just with even the empirical articles. Look to see in their reference section where they got information for their lit review. So that's also a method that you can do. Um, so that's what a meta-analysis is. Not all meta-analyses are going to be super like readily available. So if you can't find one, that's fine. I understand. Try to just at least have 8 to 10 articles at the very least. And include a citation for the articles used. So if it's not your own original thought or common knowledge, make sure to cite your source. Make sure, like I said earlier, the literature is relevant and related to your topic. You should be showing us how in that last piece of the summary anyway. And in each summary, make sure you summarize each piece of the study in detail, but with clarity and brevity. So when you're summarizing an article, make sure to do so with important details. So you know what did they study? If for some reason their definition of their variables were very unique and you want to point that out, put that in your summary. What were the results? How does this link to your study? Make sure that you do that. And I would keep each summary for the sake of this class, I would keep each summary to about half a page. And then in that closing paragraph, make sure that you just discuss the general trends. So, for example, you would say something like, overall, in the literature, it seems that extroversion is an indicator of a high memory or a good memory, something like that. So, really discuss, like, in those 10 articles that you just read, because you should have read through them, what were the general trends that you saw? Did you see that this was an indicator of this? Did you see that this was typically related with this? Talk about 2 or 3 general trends. Compare and contrast the different things in the literature. So throughout the literature, did you see a division of the way people conceptualize something? Did you see like 2 different schools of thought? And then ultimately, how does it link to your research and what is your hypothesis? So, based on this literature, what does this mean for your study? What do you think it means for your study? And end it with talking about your hypothesis. So that is the introduction. In title page, again, I'm going to get back to everybody with the title page, but I'll be grading the introductions probably today. So be on the lookout for that. I'll put a message out when I'm done. I think you should actually see it. You should get a notification when it's actually done. Moving on to the method section. So the method section, this is what I actually asked you to write first, just because you needed to include it in your IRB. So the method section does come after the introduction. In the method section, you are essentially just breaking down what you did for your study, from the details of the participants to the research design to your ethics to everything. Okay, so it pretty much describes your study in detail. It will allow, I mean, honestly, it will allow other research to really make a decision on validity and reliability for your study. It also provides people a way to replicate your study, just like you are probably replicating somebody else's study. Um, so the first section, and the way it is here is typically it's typically the order you would find it in. Sometimes it might be participants materials design, but it's usually participants design materials. So your participants, you do need to talk about your participants. You need to talk about the demographics. Some of you have made a demographics questionnaire. When you make that demographics questionnaire, as you learned in 428, you should only include like relevant demographics, or you should only gather information for relevant demographics to your study. You do need enough to adequately describe your sample, though. So, like age, sex, maybe ethnicity, racial group, level of education, etc. Even when it's not used in your analysis, you might want to get certain demographics. So, like for example, if you're doing a study on sleep habits, it might not be a bad idea to just ask us a simple question about, hey, how often do you sleep throughout the night or something like that. So you can ask questions in the demographic section or in your demographic questionnaire that you won't necessarily use in your analysis, but may give readers some extra information about your participants. So yes, this is an example of how to word some of the demographics in your participant section. So for you, like, yes, most of you ask for age, some of you ask for sex. So when you ask for things like that, you do have to do some descriptive statistics in this section. So you need to talk about your mean age. You need to talk about, the frequency of certain demographics. You need to talk about the standard deviation of any like continuous variables like age. So what was the mean age? What was the standard deviation of the age? How many males? How many females? What percentage of males? What percentage of females? Um, how many freshmen, how many sophomores, things like that. So talk about what's called the descriptive statistics of your participants, which are things like mean, frequency, the highest age, or your high and low ranges. That's really important to have in there as well. Moving on to the design. So there's a lot of different ways to write the design, but you typically do need to have a couple of things here. You need to talk about your sampling procedures. So, how exactly did you recruit participants? Did you use convenient sampling? Did you use systematic sampling? Did you use random sampling? Talk about your variables and their definition. So this is actually why I had you do that assignment where you did define your variables. This is where you're going to put that information. And then talk about what kind of study you ran. So did you run an experiment? Did you run a non-experimental? Did you run an ex post facto? Did you do a correlational? And then talk about if you did do an experimental research project, how were your conditions manipulated? If you didn't, um, let's say you have some categorical variables, how are they categorized? So talk a little bit about your design. Moving on to the materials. So for the materials, you need to talk about your materials. Of course, talk about what measures you use for each variable, talk about why. Please, please try to find validity and reliability for your measures. If you made your own measure, we can kind of talk about how to find reliability pretty simply. Um, but if not, if you have a measure, just simply type in the name of your scale and then reliability or validity, and see if you can find anything. If you can't find anything, then you need to report on that and say, no measures of reliability were found for the QABF. But you need to talk about who created the instrument. How is the measure scored? This is very important in the score indicators. So talk about the questions that participants will be exposed to. Talk about how those questions are scored. Is it a Likert scale? Is it an open-ended question? And then when you get the scores, what do the scores mean? And not just the scores on the Likert scale, because you do need to make sure people understand that. So, for example, if you have a question that says, how likely are you to listen to music while eating lunch? I don't know. And they have a 1 through 5. Yes, talk about what the 1 through 5 means in each question. But overall, when you score each participant, please tell us, what do those scores mean? What does a high score mean? What does a low score mean? Are there any ranges to those scores? Are the scores categorized based on the number? So please talk about all that. The procedure. So again, the procedure is a step by step on like what exactly did you do? If you ran an experiment, start from the very moment the participants signed up. So you should start how they signed up. Did they walk in the class? Where was the researcher position? Most of you did an online study, of course. So in that case, you would definitely talk about like how did they sign up? Did they read the consent form? What questionnaire did they fill out first? What questionnaire did they fill out next? Um, what did they see when they finished? Did they see a debrief form? In the human subjects and ethics issues, this is something that's pretty new. Like I've seen within the past, I'd say 4 years. It's a kind of a new section. Here, you're just gonna rewrite your risk benefit ratio as well as your consent information, but don't just copy and. I mean, yes, you're gonna end up copying and paste it, but make sure it actually fits for the paper. So if it doesn't make sense or the verb tense is wrong, you need to change it so it actually flows in the paper correctly. And then the last part is your data analysis plan. In that data analysis plan, that is different from your design. So in your design, you're just talking about overall what kind of experiment or what kind of study it is. Is it a correlational study? Is it experimental? Is it non-experimental? Is it ex post facto? In your data analysis plan, you are actually talking about the inferential statistical test that you're going to use. So this is when you're going to talk about the t-test or the ANOVA or the Pearson correlation. What are the assumptions that you find from this test? For example, you can say that this study will be using the t-test to analyze the difference between the means of group A, which is the group that likes to listen to music during lunch, and group B, et cetera, et cetera. And justification for why you're using the test. So again, based on the fact that this study has two separate groups, and the scores are the means of each group, this is the correct test, et cetera, et cetera. So that is what the data analysis plan is. Yeah, the justification for why you're using the test, just talk about, you know, essentially why your variables are right for that test. Because not every variable is right for every test. So if you are if you have two means that you want to compare, then yes, that is why you're using the t-test. If you have more than three groups, you can't use a t-test, you need to use an ANOVA. So this study looks at three separate groups or comparison means of three separate groups, which is which an ANOVA is the most appropriate test for. So just something as simple as that, and it can be a small paragraph. Again, like with the introduction, the method section has its own, and I want to say I graded the method section already, but I really try to break it down in the rubric. Most of these things are not options, guys. So I just want y'all to know that if it's on this rubric, it's on the rubric for a reason. It's not exactly an option. I wanted you to actually include it in here. So what I didn't see all the time was in the participants. Yes, it was a big thing. A lot of people didn't do it. So I didn't really see a spot for those descriptive statistics. I just saw people saying that the study has a participant pool of McNeese students, but I didn't see like there were blank males and blank females. The standard deviate or the mean age was blank. Of course, you're not going to have that information just yet, but I where I'm saying blank, I literally wanted you to like put a blank because you're going to have to report on that at the end of the class when you write this paper anyway, and you're going to have to put that in your poster presentation. If you had screening criteria or not. So was this study only available to freshmen? Was it only available to, sophomores? If you did have screening criteria, please put that. If not, then also put that. So no screening criterion was included in this study. Again, a spot for missing data. A lot of you have what's called like a validity question or a validity checking question that participants have to answer correctly for them to be for you to be able to use their data. You're going to put that in there too. And if you're not missing any data, you'll put that in there too. Do you have any ethnicity codes? Do you have any group codes, actually? So if you have a group A, group B, group red, group blue, group one, group two, talk about what those codes are for those groups. How many people were in each group if you do have groups? Where did you recruit the participants? Everyone did pretty good with that. And how are they compensated again? Everyone did pretty good with that. Yeah, everything else is literally from the notes. There's nothing in here that I included that was not in the notes. I mean, it's coming straight from the notes. So if you do have any questions about your score, I always put the feedback in the I put like a feedback file in your graded section as well. I don't know how it shows up on your side, but I am putting a PDF feedback file um, of the rubric in like a Word document with actual like notes and stuff or comments. That should also be there. So you should have access to two feedback files as well as your grade. If you don't see that, make sure to get with me so I can show you where it is. But yes, that is that for the introduction and method section. When you do your poster, it's going to help a tremendous amount if you have this done. And since it'll be graded, you'll already have the corrections because your poster presentation is essentially a mini version of your paper. So you'll just be able to, if you have this done and revised already, you'll be able to just like pull out the most important parts of each section and put it on your poster. It'll already pretty much be done. So, but all right, y'all, if you have any questions about the introduction or method section, please let me know.